Now, The Hunt Palmer Show.
Yes! I feel like I've been waiting for this my entire life.
You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge.
Jolly good fun. Jolly good.
Locking down the middle of the day.
America's favorite daytime fun show.
Live from the Mercedes-Benz of Baton Rouge studio. This is Hunt Palmer.
Welcome in. Hunt Palmer coming to you from the Mercedes-Benz Baton Rouge studio downtown in the capital city on this Wednesday. About half the work week in the rearview mirror. Thanks for hanging out with us here on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge. Got Jacob Beck and Cassie Spazzali back there on the ones and twos. And it's that time of year where there's just lots and lots going on. So we'll get to all of it coming up here over the next 2 hours. Koki Riley from The Advocate covers LSU baseball. He's with us in 15 minutes. He was there yesterday as LSU defeated Southern. He'll be down to Bahia day as LSU takes on Nichols in a chilly environment down there in Thibodaux. It's a what-if Wednesday. Harold Perkins is moving positions, kind of. Talk to Matthew Bruni at 2 o'clock about LSU hoops. Got a baseball recap and a look ahead this afternoon at 2:15. And then we'll get to my first SEC baseball power rankings at 2:30. I've put them together. I have watched like 5 SEC teams play. I've looked at stat sheets. I've listened to podcasts. I've read some game stories, but it may not be perfect. We'll just get through it at 2:30. Appreciate you locking us in. Let's start the same way we start each and every day with our Genesis opening drive.
It's time for Hunt's opening drive, presented by Genesis of Baton Rouge.
Two things can be very, very much true at the exact same time. LSU played the worst basketball team in the SEC last night. That is true. LSU played its most complete basketball game in the last 2 months last night. That is also true. The Tigers handled South Carolina from the start of the game to the finish of the game and won it by 14. It was never really close in the second half. The Gamecocks never truly made a run, and LSU deserves credit for that. We're all aware that LSU is 3-10 in the league. We are all aware that South Carolina is atrocious. Like, all that we're aware of. But that doesn't mean that LSU didn't go out there and play well. South Carolina has played 7 SEC teams within 5 points. South Carolina has put up a fight against some of the better teams in the league on a given night. They never win, but they put up a fight. They didn't put up a fight against LSU last night. The Tigers came out and scored 10 of the first 14 points of the game to take a 10-4 lead and never really looked back. You look at the duration of the first half, and yes, South Carolina hit a 3 to cut it to 2 at one point, but LSU immediately went on a 7-0 run to make it 9. South Carolina, in the last 15 minutes of this first half last night, never made consecutive baskets, meaning scored with twice without LSU scoring between them. Never once happened in the last 15 minutes of the first half. And that allowed LSU to open up a 14-point lead at halftime. And you figure at some point, okay, South Carolina's going to make a push. And they kind of did. LSU got a bucket right out of the break on their first possession. Damian Collins scored to make it a 16-point lead. And then South Carolina goes on a 7-0. Thomas hits a couple of twos. Pringle knocks in a dunk. Murray Boyles hits a free throw. And it's 9. And at that point, you're going, okay, here comes South Carolina. LSU immediately stretched it out to 14. Curtis Givens hit a 3 when his defender fell down. And at that point, the Tigers were never threatened the rest of the way. At one point, it got to 9. LSU immediately stretched it to 17, and they got it all the way up to 21 with just under 9 minutes to go in the game and salted it away rather routinely after that. So LSU deserves a lot of credit, and it goes back to Saturday where I said, look, it's just good that those guys got to win. Being a college athlete is a lot of long hours, and when you consistently are doing everything that's required of you and you're getting no positive results on the floor or on the field or on the court or wherever you may be, like, that's very difficult mentally. And for LSU to have that uplifting win on Saturday and then to come back on what was a really tight window because you had a Wednesday game, then you had a Saturday game that involved travel, and then you had to come back and play on Tuesday. That's as tight as it can get for you. And they did a great job. They were prepared. They were ready, and they came out and played a really, really good basketball game. LSU shot the ball great, especially from the three-point line. They made 6 of their 13 threes in the first half. Victorious Miller made a couple of those. Mike Williams made a couple of those. It wasn't all Cam Carter. Usually everything has to fall on Cam Carter, and he was very good last night, but not everything fell on Cam Carter. And LSU played a lot of guards for a lot of minutes in this game. You saw in the first half, Victorious Miller started and played 18 minutes. Curtis Givens started and played 60 minutes. Those are true freshmen that are out there playing. Jai Bailey played 13 minutes. Cam Carter played 15 minutes. Jordan Sears came off the bench. He and Mike Williams combined to play 11 minutes. And you had Corey Chess coming off the bench because he's dealing with some spasms. So you started 4 guards and Damian Collins, and you played a small lineup a lot of the game. It wasn't all of the game. You did have some time where Collins and Chess were on the floor. You had some time where Miller and Chess were on the floor. Miller and Collins. Like, you had some multiple forward looks, but a lot of the time, LSU was in a 4-guard lineup. And if you're going to play small, you're going to need to do some things right. You're going to need to assist the ball and take care of the ball. If you're going to have guards out there, they need to assist the ball and take care of the ball. Well, you had a 19 assists in the game to just 10 turnovers. That's taking care of the ball. That's assisting the ball. You need to shoot it well. LSU shot it at a 50% clip. They were 43% from three-point range. They made 6 of their 7 free throws in the game. So what guards do well, handle it, facilitate it, shoot it, LSU did very, very well. But you're going to have a trade-off, and it's going to be oftentimes difficult to win the backboard when you've got a bunch of guards out there. And you did lose the backboard. You lost it by 4. But because you did some other things well, you offset that on the glass. And one of them that you did really well was turn South Carolina over with some relentless ball pressure, getting your hands in passing lanes, showing some quickness. And LSU turned South Carolina over 18 times in this game, as we mentioned, to LSU's 10 turnovers. There was no bigger bugaboo for this LSU team throughout the duration of this losing streak and their bad play than the turnover bug. It was just awful. They were turning the ball over 18, 19, 20 times in a lot of these games. You go back over the last 4 games, 9 turnovers, 9 turnovers, 9 turnovers, 10 turnovers. They have cleaned that up. No, Oklahoma's not great. No, South Carolina's not great. Ole Miss is pretty good. And you've cleaned up the turnover side of things to an extent. It's not perfect, but you finally did something you had not been doing at all. We talked about all the time when LSU was turning the ball over so much, they weren't like giving up a bad shooting percentage, but they were getting so many fewer shots than their opponents, there's no way to win the game. Well, last night, LSU took 62 field goals, and South Carolina took 51. South Carolina shot more free throws than you, 15-7. But what did we talk about yesterday? South Carolina's top 20 in the country in free throws attempted per game. They're 19th in the country in getting to the foul line. They did so at about 23 a night. And LSU only allowed them to get there 15 times. If you would have told me going to the game that South Carolina's going to make 12 free throws, I said, well, it's over. Because South Carolina doesn't shoot the ball well. They're not a great rebounding team. They're not a good three-point shooting team. They rely on getting to the free throw line to create their offense and slowing the game down. And LSU scored 81 points. That's not a real slow game. And South Carolina only made 12 free throws. So I'm not here to absolve this team, this program, from all the wrongdoing and all the disappointing results. We know where it is. 3-10 is not acceptable. I get it. I'm not trying to blow smoke here. But they have gotten better over the last couple of games against worse competition. Trust me, LSU's played some subpar competition and played much worse than they did last night. And there's a little bit of a personnel adjustment that's being made because of some injuries and some guys that are battling things on the front court. But Mike Williams has stepped up. He had a season high last night. He made 3 of his 4 threes, scored 13 points. And then you look at the true freshmen in Victorious Miller, Curtis Givens, and Robert Miller. And those 3 guys were excellent. Miller had 12. Givens only had 3. But he got 3 rebounds, didn't turn the ball over in 26 minutes of action. So you combine all their stats together, and you're talking about a group that scored 22 points with 2 turnovers. That's solid work from some of your younger guys that weren't capable of that in early January. It's just the natural evolution of a season where guys grow up a little bit. And you don't, in this day and age, want to count on very many freshmen. You just don't. You can go get older players to come and play roles. And LSU does have some older players, but we've seen over the last 2 games, Jordan Sears has played a total of 24 minutes in the last 2 games. You're looking at a true freshman in Curtis Givens last night that played 26 last night. Givens played more last night than Sears has in 2 games combined. And he didn't shoot it great, just 1 of 4, missed 2 of his threes, but he made a big one. He didn't turn the ball over. So kudos to LSU. Hopefully they're feeling pretty good about themselves. They get today off. They don't have to travel. They don't have to travel on Friday either. And they can rest up today, recuperate, prepare on Thursday and Friday, even into Saturday for a 5 o'clock tip-off. And the number 2 team in the country is coming to town. And we know, I told you yesterday, how I expect the last 4 games to go. It doesn't look very good. You're playing a bunch of ranked teams, playing a bunch of teams. Playing a bunch of teams that are
really good.
Really good. And, some are at home, some are on the road. It doesn't matter. They're better than you. But last night, LSU had an opportunity against a team that's worse than them to take control of the game. They scored 41 points in the first half. They scored 40 points in the second half. They won the game by 14 points. They were never threatened. That's a solid effort by a group of guys that we've ragged on a little bit, criticized rightly since the beginning of January. They've continued to fight, continued to hustle, continued to scrap. They've improved some aspects of what they're doing offensively, and they played a good game last night. All that stuff can be true. 3-10 cannot be good enough. Last night can be a solid effort. Now you see if you can show up against one of the better teams in the league over the next 3 weeks. That's what's next. Matt McMahon said last night in his post-game press conference, hey, we're taking every game as a 1-game season. That's the only way to handle things at this point. The league's really good. We can't get caught up in losing streaks or winning streaks or where we can make this tournament or that. None of that is relevant. It's just 1 game. And the next game is on Saturday in the PMAC at 5 o'clock against one of the best teams in college basketball. It's really physical and can shoot threes. So we'll see how that goes. That's our Genesis opening drive, brought to you by Genesis of Baton Rouge. Let's talk some baseball. Koki Riley was in the box yesterday. He'll be down at Nichols tonight. He covers the LSU baseball team. Will join us next.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Genesis of Baton Rouge. GenesisofBatonRouge.com is the website. Every single model in the Genesis line, from the entry level to the highest end, comes with a standard set of safety features because they're not going to make shortcuts when it comes to safety. Every single vehicle on the line got the IIHA safety award. Some of them were safety awards plus. That's important to them at Genesis, and it's important to you as a car buyer. Get on by Genesis of Baton Rouge. It's on Airline at Pico, across from Women's Hospital, and just see this line of vehicles. They've got your sedan all the way up to the SUV. It's a luxury model. Every bell and whistle that you could want with the safety to back it up. Get on by and see them. Genesis of Baton Rouge, Airline at Pico. You can check them out online, GenesisofBatonRouge.com. Only been there about 2 years now, so go on by and see them. It's Genesis of Baton Rouge, GenesisofBatonRouge.com.
You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show on 104.5 ESPN, Baton Rouge.
It is, of course, a What If Wednesday on this Wednesday. So if you're there in the Bayou Ford chat and you got some what ifs for us to get to in the next segment, you can bring them on. They can be LSU sports related. They can be not LSU sports related. Any way you want to slice it, you can do it. Just send me a tweet or get in the Bayou Ford chat. We'll do some What If Wednesday coming up here in the next 15 minutes. Excited to get SEC baseball power rankings to you in the second hour as well. Harold Perkins is going to play the star exclusively coming up this football season. We'll talk about what that means for LSU in 30 minutes from right now. But right now, let's go to the Jim's Firearms Hotline. We'll chat with Koki Riley from The Advocate, covers the LSU baseball beat. Koki, how are you?
Great. How's it going?
Going well. Do you have enough clothing to wear to Thibodaux, Louisiana tonight?
Ooh, we'll see. Hopefully I didn't leave too many of my jackets and warm clothes back home in Massachusetts. So it's going to be tough.
Usually a couple of these a year. They're in the rearview mirror pretty quickly, but they can sneak up on you. I know Jay Johnson talked about the Louisiana Tech game from 3 years ago up in Ruston where LSU kicked it all over the place for 5 errors and 30-degree temperatures. It was nasty that day. We'll see what tonight holds. But I want to go backwards before we go forwards and talk about the weekend that was, and, of course, yesterday against Southern. LSU's pitching's kind of stealing the headlines at this point with their strikeout to walk ratio. What's the most important aspect of all of that to you?
That they're throwing strikes, that they're getting ahead in the count, that they're forcing these opponents to swing at pitches. Often, granted, you can get a lot of these, I guess, guys to chase that stuff low in the dirt, especially when you get ahead with 2 strikes, but you still got to get ahead 1-2 or 0-2 in the count, and they're just doing that so consistently, and it really doesn't matter who the heck's on the mound, which is kind of remarkable. And I think for some of these guys, it's expected, and that they get ahead of the count, and that they're just known strike throwers. You think of Cade Anderson, you think of a guy like Zach Cowan, even Anthony Ianson. But there's just some guys who, heading into the year, we thought, all right, like what are they going to look like from a control standpoint? And I'm thinking of Grant Fontenot. I'm thinking of even Chase Shores, given some of the command issues that he had during the preseason, and Jacob Myers for an inning. That's another guy, and all those guys, pretty much through strikes. So again, 3 walks through 4 games, like that's unheard of. And I don't want to say it doesn't matter who you face, because some of that again is getting guys to chase out of the zone at a higher rate than normal. But I still think it's very notable, because I look back from the first 3 games last season, they had 22 walks through the first 3 games. This year they had 2. So that's clearly an upgrade, that's what stood out. That's what has stood out to me the most.
I know, just from watching this program and just college baseball over a couple of decades, like, it's not realistic to think you're going to have 15 pitchers you can go to that can just dominate.
No.
But do you think that the depth of this staff is going to manifest itself over the course of 56 games, and they are going to be able to count on more guys than normal?
Yeah, because I think a lot of it has to do with the strikes, given what we just talked about. Last year, walks was an issue for them. And, for example, like in that 3rd game that they played just to open the season, again, somewhat similar level of competition, they had 12 walks in that game. And that's a lot, especially when you're going up against a team that is probably going to be more prone to swing that stuff outside the zone. So, and that kind of goes to show that, like, when you got to the 3rd game this time around, you obviously got nowhere close to 12 walks. I don't think they might have had 1 walk in the 3rd game, but I don't even know if they had a walk in that 3rd game. So this year, I think it just kind of goes to show you, just obviously, like the strikeouts and all that stuff is very, very impressive so far to start. 45 strikeouts through that first series, most they've had in a 3-game set against a single opponent since at least 1992, because 1992 is when they started counting those stats. So I think that kind of goes to show that they still have the strikeout stuff. They led the country in strikeouts last year. They can strike people out. It's just a matter of doing that while not putting guys on base through walks or erratic control or anything like that.
Was there a pitcher you saw over the weekend that either surprised you or that you'd like to see more of, that maybe could have a bigger role than you had anticipated?
Oh, that's a really good question. I'm kind of interested in Grant Fontenot, and he's got a mid-90s fastball. The breaking ball is not too bad, and I think he has the stuff to potentially do something for this team. I don't really know what role that is in exactly, and I don't think he's going to be, necessarily at the top of the food chain when we get to SEC play. But like, could he pitch an inning here and there in a spot? Like, it wouldn't shock me. And I thought he flashed some interesting stuff at times during the preseason and the fall. And again, like, the stuff is good enough to pitch at this level. It's just a matter of, the strikes have been kind of an issue for him, and I'm really curious to see, like, it wasn't an issue for him this past weekend, so I'm kind of curious to see, like, what he looks like as the year goes along. That's a guy I'm just keeping in the back of my head.
Do you expect the 4 freshmen to contribute?
Absolutely, yeah. One, they kind of need Cooper Williams to contribute because he's a lefty and they don't have a ton of lefties. That's for one. Even if he's not lighting up the radar gun quite as much as those other guys are. I think Maverick Rizzi is the rawest out of all those guys, and out of all the guys who could, if things went sideways, he could drop out just because it has nothing to do with his ability. It's more to do with the fact that he just needs some more refinement, whether it's adding a third pitch. And he's a really big guy, a lot of moving pieces to his delivery. So I'm kind of curious to see what his control looks like throughout the year. I know it looks pretty good in that game, but against top competition that's more used to seeing 97 would think, what's that going to look like? But either way, I think he's going to contribute at least at the beginning of the year for them because he's just too talented for them not to do that. And then with Casey Evans and William Schmidt, they're going to be big, important bullpen pieces for this team. I think that's been pretty clear. And Schmidt's refined to go along with the incredible stuff. And Casey Evans, he's seen a big velocity jump since becoming a pitcher only because he arrived at campus here and in high school he was a two-way guy. So I think that's really helped him with his velo. So I think that, all four of those guys, I think at the very least they're going to start the year as major contributors out of the bullpen for this team.
Koki Riley is our guest, LSU beat reporter for The Advocate. You can follow him online all season long for all your LSU coverage. He'll be with us on Wednesdays moving forward. Offensively, good to see Ethan Fry get that monkey off his back yesterday with his first home run. Y'all talked to him after the game. I'd imagine he was pretty happy with that.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was surprising that he hadn't hit a home run yet because he's a bigger guy and he's hit the ball pretty hard when he's hit it a few times. It just he hasn't really elevated and celebrated, so to say, yet in his career. And he's kind of like a very under the radar, power. He could be a very under the radar source of power for them. I don't know if he's going to play enough to hit 15 homers, but he can give him a little bit of boost in the power department just because of his size and his potential as a power hitter. And they need that given just the lack of power that they have on this team, lack of proven power, I should say. And I'm just really curious to see how his role evolves throughout the year because again, he doesn't have an obvious path to playing time. I guess other than facing lefties, facing left-hand pitching and being the DH in those scenarios because it's gonna be hard to put him on the field because they have so many good defensive outfielders and he's probably the weakest of the top six. And then offensively, yes, he's a power bat, but it's just hard to find his bat in the lineup when if Ashton Larson's playing well and they want to play Jake Brown and Chris Stanfield and Derek Curiel are all playing well, and there's also Josh Pearson. So it's just a lot of names, So his role as the year goes along, I'm really curious to see how that sort of develops.
To that point, do you have any sense of what Jay is looking for from the Pearson, Larson, Brown, including Fry in that discussion in right field and at DH? Is he just trying to get him as many bats as he can right now and see where the dice fall?
Yeah, for all those guys, right? And it's just trying to find enough playing time for all of them to, when you get to SEC play or you get deep into SEC play and you're coming up to the SEC tournament to where the four guys that you want to play, or maybe the five guys you want to play, depending on the matchup, And I think they're going to be I think they're probably going to be really patient with it, and I don't want to say experiment because he would never admit that he's experimenting. But I mean, they don't have the pressure to just figure this out immediately, And even in that first SEC week, they played Missouri, and they can put things a little bit for that series since that's probably going to be their easiest series of the year in conference play. So they got a few weeks to figure this thing out, and I'm glad I'm not him because I wouldn't want to make that decision as to which four of the six you'd want to play. I think it's good for Ethan, the fact that he's become sort of like a rock for them against left-hand pitching, and at least he has a kind of a role built out for him already that he kind of started last season. But for the other guys, like for Ashton Larson especially, where he was their best hitter on Sunday. He hasn't even started the other three games.
Yeah.
So it's crazy. And after that game, you kind of leave that Sunday game being like, how are they going to keep this guy out of the lineup every single day if he's just going to do that and be such a consistent bat to ball hitter with some power potential? It's really they just got a lot of tough conversations to be had when it comes to figuring out that outfield over the next few weeks. But again, I think they have some more time to figure it out.
Any sense of how they might want to handle pitching tonight in Chili Thibodeau?
I'd be pretty surprised if Gavin Guidry isn't starting. He's the last of the stretched out guys who hasn't pitched yet. And then after that, I think you could maybe see Chandler Dorsey, the South Florida transfer. Jay Newt only threw an inning. Jacob Myers will be available for this game. That was a note that Jay Johnson mentioned that he was available to pitch against Southern, and you can see the revenge game tonight against Nichols. So those are just a couple guys I keep an eye out for. I'm curious to see how long they let Gidry go. Maybe that will depend on the score. So I think it would help LSU if they got to the run rule and ended this game in 7 innings just so they didn't have to use too many guys, because I think you'd rather not have this game be too close and not have to use some of your better relievers, because I think in theory those guys could be available in this game. But ideally, I think you'd rather not use them.
Let's try to stay warm down there on the bayou this evening. We'll see you this weekend at the box, Koki.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
Koki Routley with The Advocate, going to be with us every single Wednesday. If you're looking for your baseball coverage, he's got you covered. You can follow him on Twitter or find his work over at theadvocate.com. All right, it is What If Wednesday. I'm going to give you my thoughts on LSU baseball down at Nichols later on in hour number 2. Matthew Bruni in 30 minutes, so tons to do here on a Wednesday edition of The Hunt Palmer Show.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
One Bath and Closets. OneBathAndClosets.com is the website. David Duvall, 30 years redesigning and remodeling bathrooms and closets. Look, safety can be an issue in the bathroom. We know that, especially as folks age. Falls can be really hazardous. You want to have that happen. You can mitigate against it. You can never prevent it completely, but you can mitigate against it. And David Duvall and his team are happy to help with that. Non-slip floors, guardrails, handrails, and slippery areas. You can do walk-in tubs that are convenient and safer. You can put benches in showers as well. David Duvall and his team are happy to handle all of that for you. Start with that free consultation at OneBathAndClosets.com and look at some of the pictures of their great work. Look at the testimonials from some of their satisfied customers. It's all there at OneBathAndClosets.com. If you'd like to have some of that looked at in a bathroom for someone that you love, David Duvall and his team are thrilled to do that for you. So go to OneBathAndClosets.com and get that free consultation today. OneBathAndClosets.com.
This is the Hunt Palmer Show on 104.5 ESPN, Baton Rouge.
My initial SEC baseball power rankings coming up. Matthew Bruni in 25 minutes talking some hoops. Got a preview LSU and Nichols tonight from the Bayou as well. Harold Perkins has a new position. We'll talk about that in about 10 minutes from right now. It is Wednesday, 1:30. That means time to play a little What If Wednesday.
Time, space, reality. It's more than a linear path. Where a single choice can branch out into infinite realities. Follow me and ponder the question, what if?
All right, first one here. What if Brian Kelly let Nuss sling it in the second half against USC?
I mean, I don't remember them taking their foot off the gas in the second half. They couldn't run the ball. Emory had like 2 good carries, and that was all the running they were able to do against USC. So I just don't remember it being a situation where they sat on the football.
Yeah, I don't either.
So I think they probably still would have lost because they weren't as efficient as they needed to be running the ball and on offense. And then you had a situation where you couldn't stop Miller Moss and USC from throwing the ball late in the game. I kind of forgot about that one-handed catch that dude made, and apparently that was like the only play he made the entire year, and he climbs up and makes like a 30-yard catch on a one-handed grab. I think it was over Stamps. Like, that bums me out. Just don't make that play. You're not any good. Your team's not good. Just screw up and let's win the game. But no, LSU just loses season openers.
Yeah, Nussmeier threw it 39 times in that game, so I don't think they really
just
held
not
back.
Good enough.
Yeah. All right, next one. What if LSU's campus was in New Orleans?
That's interesting. It would certainly be different. I kind of like it right where it is, to be quite honest. If it was in New Orleans, I'm trying to think about. I don't have a great answer for like massive sweeping changes other than the obvious stuff. Katrina would have been a lot worse for LSU than it was, but we're now 20 years beyond that. So, I don't have a great comment. Well, man, I just picked Tulane up and like put it there. I guess.
Let's think about like where would they play? Would they play football in the Super? I mean, they could fill the Superdome. So I mean, they could play there
easily. It's a lot smaller than Tiger Stadium.
Yeah. So I mean, I don't know if they'd play there or if they would try. I don't know where.
I do not hate the idea of LSU playing every football game indoors.
That does not irk me at all. That would be pretty cool.
Now tailgating not very good.
No, it wouldn't.
It would change things a significant amount.
It would.
I'm good with where I actually love college towns. I love my time in Oxford and Athens and Auburn. Some of those like real true college towns in the SEC. Baton Rouge is not one of those, but that's okay. We've got better hotels and better restaurants and a little bit better places to live than a lot of those small towns. But yeah, I don't know. It's a decent question.
Yeah.
I just don't have a very good answer for you.
All right, next one. What if every company required their employees to have at least one business meeting out of the office every week in a social setting, i.e., required weekly golf meeting, top golf meeting at a sporting event, etc.? I think we know who wrote this one.
I did not write that one.
Wow.
That was from Twitter. Got sent to me. That's too much for most people.
Once a week is a lot.
That's a lot of time, like either just getting out of the office for like 2 hours and not answering phone calls or emails or getting stuff done. And for some people, a lot of time around coworkers. Like I've worked at 4 different places and I can confidently say I would be very, very comfortable having lunch or a top golf meeting with my coworkers at every place I've ever worked. Like I've never thought, man, this is just a really crummy group that's around here. Some are better than others based on the time, but like I'm okay with it, the places I've worked, but that's too much. You want to tell me quarterly? Yeah, I'm all in for that. I think that's a good deal because people tend to let their hair down a little bit. Like our company Christmas party is a ton of fun. And I've had multiple places where I've lived where the company Christmas party was a lot of fun. It's just a different setting, but once a week, way too much.
All right, next one here. We actually got some from my wife, and they're not. Hopefully, they're not going to be.
Not going to ruin the thoughts and dreams of every child in the greater Baton Rouge area.
I don't think they will.
Excellent.
First one. What if LSU and the Saints swapped coaches for a season?
So the LSU gets Kellen Moore, and the Saints get Brian Kelly. I gotta say, Brian Kelly going ballistic on the sideline against one of those pros is not going to go so hot.
Probably not.
Kellen Moore coaching LSU, I think he'd do a pretty good job calling plays. I don't know about Kellen the recruiter.
Yeah, I think he could probably do it. I mean, he's pretty young. Like he knows he went through college. He went through recruiting.
But we talked about, like he's an X's and O's dude. He's in the playbook, and that's not necessarily where the recruiting bread is buttered. So interesting. I think that there wouldn't be some sort of massive deal. Now, if you take Sean Payton out of there and have him go recruit, I don't think that's what he wants to do at all. Back in that time, you got Ed Ogeron coaching the Saints. I think that'd be a little bit of an interesting deal. But these two guys, it wouldn't. They're suited where they are.
I would say that.
Brian Kelly needs to be the authoritarian, and Kellen Moore needs to go call plays.
All right, next one here. What if aliens came to Earth? What human are you sending as the ambassador?
Oh, man. What human am I sending as the ambassador to the aliens? Well, Victor Wembanyama might fit in.
Yeah,
in terms of size and just general ability. He's much more like an alien than a human.
Well, that's true, but we also don't know what these aliens look like. They may be small. They may not be giant. Who knows?
I'm just trying to send somebody that's got some alien-esque characteristics to kind of bridge the gap,
so.
as it were.
Yeah, I was thinking of somebody who's probably just going to be very diplomatic. Well, I don't know.
You got anybody in mind? You want to send Theo Vaughn up there to just kind of chill with the aliens?
Well, he would probably make them laugh if they understand laughter and things like. If they actually have the ability to laugh, then he would probably be able to do that.
I don't think anyone is at any point in the near future going to send me or have me making any diplomatic decisions.
I don't think so.
That's really out of my scope of work.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
I'm more into midweek baseball games.
Yeah. All right, next one here. What if you got randomly sent to a different city in the U.S.? Where could you not survive? Gotta be somewhere north, I guess, right?
Yeah, you send me to,
Maybe like Minneapolis or something?
Yeah, Minneapolis or Milwaukee. Like, we're going to have some real issues.
Milwaukee's going to be a serious problem.
Send
but you're
me
at
to,
least close to Chicago and Milwaukee.
Yeah, you send me to like rural Iowa in like early January. I'm going to have some significant issues.
Yeah.
The cold weather is what really comes to mind initially.
The real problem, yeah.
I'd have issues like trying to survive. Like literally, if you sent me up to like rural Wyoming where it's like snow all the time and I got to figure out how to drive through that and like shovel stuff around, like we're going to have real problems trying to get places. I don't even know where the grocery store is in these mountain towns. We got that. There'd be real problems.
I would not.
I got a better chance maneuvering like a language barrier than I do dealing with the snow.
Yeah. All right. Next one here. What if LSU baseball played an international tournament early on in the season, like the Puerto Rico tournament this past weekend?
I think that'd be great for the players. Obviously not great for the folks who buy season tickets at the box and want to go do that. And I mean, Frisco's easier for LSU fans to get to than Puerto Rico. But guess what? They're going to play tonight, and it's going to be 20-something degrees, 30-something degrees.
Probably a lot better weather
Puerto
than
Rico
right
better
now.
than that. So it has its perks. Yeah. I'm all for these young student athletes getting to travel the world. I love that the basketball teams go abroad one summer every 4 years to go do stuff. Like, that's a cool opportunity as a young person that you have when you don't have family and job and all that kind of stuff to deal with. You can go and do something really fun that you can talk about for the rest of your life. I'm all for that kind of stuff.
All right, next one here. What if the PGA Tour and LIV come to an agreement soon? Will Hunt be excited about golf again?
I'm excited to watch the PGA Tour every week. I just understand that it's watered down, and if they did come to agreement, I'd be ecstatic. I just don't see it happening imminently because there's too much money involved and there's too many ego involved, and LIV has ripped golf in half, and I can't even get into it. It's disgusting is what it is. So we'll just leave it at that.
All right, next one. What if Bregman doesn't muff the ground ball against UCLA?
It's tough. That team was absolutely good enough to win it, and the fact that they lost that, they could play that game against UCLA with Nola on the mound 9 more times, they would win at least 8 of them because UCLA was never going to score on him.
Yep.
And they didn't. Bregman kicked a ground ball. And LSU would eventually, like LSU's offense was better. It was a lot better than UCLA's. That team should have won it. They were going to get in the second round to get into the driver's seat. They were going to face NC State with no Carlos Rodon because he had pitched against North Carolina. That team was good enough to win the whole thing. And it's just tough because they flew out to the track 5 times. Ibarra and Katz and all those guys. It's a definite what if that they should have won it, because that year, it's 2013, 3 teams separated themselves. Vanderbilt, who didn't make Omaha, North Carolina, who was already in the losers bracket, and LSU. And once you had won that first game, you were going to get back around to NOLA. Nobody could beat NOLA, so it was what it was. But the park got the best of them that day.
All right, last one here. What if I was a dad?
You're not counting chickens here, are you?
Maybe.
Well, that would be very good if you were a father of a human. Got anything you want to say?
Yeah. It's not a what if, actually. It is a true thing.
I love to hear that very, very much. That's wonderful news. Congrats to the Becks who will welcome a child. I'll have 2 by that point, so I'll be a wealth of knowledge and information.
I'm just gonna like ask you. Anytime I have a question, I'm just gonna go to you, Hunt, because
you believe I have the answers.
I think you're gonna be the foremost authority on this.
Myers is still thriving, so here we are.
That's true.
I haven't screwed it up too bad yet. Congrats to the Becks.
Thank you.
Let's go to break.
The Hunt Palmer Show. Palmer Show on 104.5 ESPN, Baton Rouge.
1 here on a Wednesday edition of the Hunt Palmer Show. Appreciate you hanging out with us here. Got a lot to do in hour number 2. Matthew Bruni in 12 minutes talking LSU basketball. Got to get to my SEC baseball power rankings as well, but we'll finish the hour with a little LSU football. Julie Boudin over of On 3 did a great job of catching up with LSU defensive coordinator Blake Baker. Had an exclusive interview there for the Bengal Tiger, and he confirmed to her that Harold Perkins would play the star this year in LSU's defense. That's the role that Major Burns occupied much of this year, and this is the last stop here for Harold Perkins and the last effort for LSU to truly unlock a really dynamic and talented defensive player. I think everyone since that breakout his freshman year has expected absolute dominance from Harold Perkins. And for good reason. You're talking about a 5-star recruit who in the last 7 games of 2022, so only 7 games, that's about half a season, he had 11 tackles for loss and 6 sacks over 7 games. You extrapolate that out for a year, you're talking about 11, 12 sacks, 20-plus tackles for loss. Like, that's first-team All-American monster productions type stuff. And since that first year, Perkins has totaled 5.5 sacks and 15 tackles for loss over a season and a half. Now, we understand the numbers are skewed a little bit because he missed the last 7-8 games of LSU's season this past season with an ACL tear. But anyone would suggest that Perkins hasn't been as impactful moving forward after that 7-game sample his freshman season. So they've played him at nickel. They've played him at defensive end. They've played him at inside linebacker. They've moved him all over the place. And they haven't found the best way to use him. And part of it is using 2 different coordinators. Part of it is not having great personnel around him. Part of it is Harold learning a new spot. Like, there are a lot of factors at play here. But what cannot be argued is that this is the last chance. And I think the star makes a ton of sense for Harold Perkins. Let's take Major Burns' role in last year's defense and put numbers to it. He played 241 snaps at slot corner, 213 in the box around the line of scrimmage, and then 49 on the defensive line. That, to me, is a blend of snaps that Harold Perkins can play. Maybe a few more in the box than slot corner, not as many on the defensive line, but that's reasonable to say that, 40% at slot corner, 40% in the box, 10%, 15%, 20% on the defensive line. That's doable. You look at what Burns was asked to do. He played almost 300 snaps in coverage. He played 250 snaps against the run, and then he rushed the passer 33 times. Now, that blend is going to have to shift because Perkins has got to rush more than he is in coverage. I shouldn't say that. Not more. You got to make it closer. It can't be 292 to 33. You got to rush Perkins more than you rushed Burns. And that's doable. But you got to get into those situations. You got to get a lead. You got to get teams into third downs. Now, when I say you got to put him in Perkins in coverage a little bit, and some people go, no, don't put him in coverage. Let him rush. He's actually pretty good in coverage. 2 years ago, as a sophomore, he graded out 81.1 in his coverage snaps by Pro Football Focus. That's excellent. In the 80s is excellent. Over 291 snaps, which is not a small sample size. Like, he did a good job in coverage. He can do that. And then you've got to turn him loose when it's time to turn him loose. What you really don't want to see is him just playing right in the middle of the field, catching guards, catching tackles, and not being able to roam free. You need to use his athleticism. And his athleticism is best used in space, and the space is covering tight ends, covering short routes out of the slot, then playing on the edge and getting up the field in pass rush. All of these things you can do at the star position. His skill set is a hybrid. He's 6'1", 225, which means he's significantly bigger than corners and significantly smaller than rush ends. He's relatively speaking the same size as speedy outside linebackers, but he's more dynamic than them. He can do things in space they can't do. So if you've got a player that's got a hybrid size and skill set, put him in a hybrid position that allows him to do different things. The star is that. He's not going to play it just like Major Burns. He's not going to play it just like Juwan Johnson would have, and that was the backup. But he's got the ability to do the things that are asked of that position. It's just then a matter of teaching him that and then calling it properly so that he's covering when he needs to cover, he's affecting the game in the backfield when he needs to affect the game in the backfield, and he's changing the dynamics of the offense with his playmaking ability. The best thing LSU can do for Harold Perkins to make him the best player he can be is for the rest of the defense to step up and get the other teams into third downs, and for the team as a whole to step up and create a situation in the fourth quarter where LSU's leading, teams have to pass. You can line Perkins up on the line of scrimmage and turn him loose. That's what LSU's got to do to make Harold Perkins the best he can be. I don't think we've seen the best Harold Perkins can be. And this is no guarantee of that as you move into 2025, but it makes the most sense. Hat tip to Julie Boudouin for getting that interview over there at the Bengal Tiger on 3. I've got a column up on this entire thing at louisianasports.net right now that you can go ahead and read, but I think this makes all the sense in the world for Harold Perkins. If you missed any of the first hour of the show, catch it on demand. 1045ESPN.com's on demand tab, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, wherever you find your sound. You can always find us. Hour 2 is going to be a busy one. Matthew Bruni's coming back after Sports Center. We got our SEC Baseball Power Rankings coming as well. National headlines, and then maybe some news on the other side of this. We'll talk to Matthew Bruni next.
The Hunt Palmer Show.